Jambo sana, habari gani? Mzuri sana, wageni mwakaribishwa. Afrika hakuna matata. Matata yapo, wanayaleta hao na Waafrika wenyewe. Hello, welcome to Andunda Tree. My name is Balozi Ezrak. I'm so pleased and happy you have come across to our podcast. Here at Andunda Tree, we discuss what connects and disconnects human beings, different societies, particularly those of African descent, to the rest of the world. We share some wisdom or some wise thoughts, focusing on the reality behind the scene. Sometimes you see problems, but you don't exactly know what is happening behind the scene. People say things, but what they say may not exactly mean what they're saying. There's always meaning behind what people say, body language, and so on, different from what you probably may come across, right? That's what we do here, is to try to tell you certain things you have not thought about. I'm sure you probably already know that if you often follow Andunda Tree. So let's crack on. Today we are talking about Tanzania, right? We are on African continent, and I'm going to analyze a little bit about what is happening in Tanzania since or just before the election. As you may already know, Tanzania did its election on the 29th of October 2025, and they were able to elect the president who was in power at the time, Samia Suluhu Hassan, which is a female. Hey, very proud, very happy when Africans have female presidents. Men have been ruling African continent and the world for many years. You know, women are emerging. Also try to empower women to see what they can do. As I said, to unpack what happened or what is happening in Tanzania that you may not already know. You see, there are things that happen politically that you don't know. And because you don't follow politics with an open eye, you may miss different things. Unless if you are somebody who follows something very carefully, then you'll be able to understand exactly the reality or the truth behind the scene. On this podcast, we don't come here to advise people. We don't come here to tell you what to do. We give our point of view. It is up to you to use your sense to agree or disagree on what we are saying. As the idea here is to encourage people to always try to question things. How did you get here? Why is this happening? We try to encourage people to not look at things just as they see them. That's the idea. First of all, let me express my deepest condolences to the family who lost their loved ones in Tanzania. Just like I was saying, on the 29th of October 2025, Tanzania had its election, and on the same day, there were riots. Many people were killed by police, by soldiers, by people who are not known, and many were wounded. But before that, there were already stories. People were said to going missing. People were being imprisoned, whether this was the government or whether other people were getting involved behind the scene and carried these terrible things. Another thing we know is that many opposition leaders have been accused of wrongdoing, and this led to those opposition leaders to be placed in jail or in prison. And some of these powerful leaders, such as the leader of Chadema, Tundu Lissu, were not able to participate in the election. And many of the followers of these parties and those who were not happy about how the country was running promised to protest, because the opposition leaders, particularly Tundu Lissu, said no reform, no election, meaning that they wanted a reform in the country. The reform in terms of the constitution, the reform in terms of power sharing, the reform in terms of how people being silenced, their views are not heard. People don't feel to have enough freedom of expression in the way that they would like it to be. So these were some of the problems that were taking place just before the day of election. As you know, whenever something happens, this doesn't often happen in the vacuum, but there's also another problem, which is the deep root of these problems, which I am going to talk to you about. What I just said is what you see, is what you hear in different medias. And these led to what happened on the 29th of October 2025, where many people were killed, many wounded, many in prison. Even today, many still in prison. As you know, whenever things like this happen, there are always innocent people within, and there are always those who break the law. The devil often penetrates where something happening and do what it does best. So most of us were shocked to see what happened in Tanzania, or where Tanzania is at the moment. Things have not gone back to normal, and I think it will take a time before everything normalizes itself. This was shocking, but it was also not shocking, and I will explain why. First of all, I send my deepest condolences to everyone who were affected by this. This is not only a Tanzanian problem, but this is an African and a world problem, because humanity is when you see something horrible happening to another human being and stand against it, and if something beautiful happening, we can all come and celebrate, because we are all connected. We are all in a small piece of land that we share. We are just divided by few lines that divide us. And this is the problem that human beings always have. Sometimes we don't come together or understand that a problem happening in one country can happen in another country sooner or later. So yes, it has been a very sad moment for many Tanzanians. For those who don't know, Tanzania is a wonderful country situated in East Africa, where the beautiful Swahili is spoken. A country that used to hold Swahili very strongly, more than any other country in Africa. Now, many Tanzanians going toward English language, and this is the reason why when I start singing Jambo Jambo Sana in Swahili. And the reason this is shocking is because Tanzania experienced calmness and peace in the country for many years. The last time there was something to do with conflict or war, I can't remember the year, but I think it was during the time of Idi Amin Dada, when he tried to invade Tanzania and they pushed him out. So that was the last time. If you remember the year, or if you don't know, you might double check that. Just Google it. Mr. Google will be able to tell you. And that is in terms of peace. Politically, it is also a country that has been dominated by one party, which is the CCM, or Chama cha Mapinduzi, as they say in Swahili. And this is more like a party for those who fought for independence, Nyerere, and so on. So they have maintained the power for many, many years. And the other opposition parties don't often come close to win election. This is not the first time, by the way, opposition leaders face something like what is happening now, but this is the first time at my age actually see Tanzania going through this kind of thing, like protesting event going on in different cities. Hearing that people were protesting, people were shot, is not a Tanzania thing. In this sense, Tanzania also has a great example of countries in Africa leading in terms of democracy. In East Africa Central, you were looking at countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia. I'm not saying everything that Tanzania used to stand for in terms of democracy is gone, but I'm saying the position that they used to maintain has been shaken, and I believe this too shall pass. So that is the shocking side. But what is not shocking is that what happened in Tanzania, or what is happening in Tanzania, is the result of what is happening somewhere else in neighboring countries of Tanzania. It's just that people have not been paying attention. Remember I said that many of us, whenever something is happening in a neighboring country, we often turn a blind eye, thinking like, oh well, that is just in Burundi, in Congo, in wherever. As I said in the other episode, nobody could have predicted, again, a country in Europe will invade another country in Europe, just like we saw the Russia invasion in Ukraine. And I think Tanzanians were also caught by surprise. And this is because they have not been paying attention to what has been happening in the region. And I have seen many Tanzanians laughing, bullying Congolese. They even said a lot of nonsense to the protesting that happened in Kenya and so on. And this is because they have never imagined that could be Tanzania one day. And these are some of the wake-up call thoughts that we call on all human beings to start carrying in their heart. Bad is bad, they say, no matter who does it or where it has been done, right? And what I just said is not to blame Tanzanians, but is to say that this is the mentality of many people around the world. And this is not just in terms of the country, this is even in terms of individual. When we see people going through hard time, somebody struggling, or somebody's going through a particular sickness, you already jump in conclusion, oh, it's because he doesn't do this, it's because of that. These are the mentality that we need to remove. You have to understand first what the other person going through before you jump to a conclusion. That's what we encourage here. So what's happening in Tanzania was just a matter of time for those who were looking at what has been happening in the region for some years now. So in order to understand what is happening in Tanzania, or what happened in Tanzania on the 29th of October 2025, as I said, you have to look at the region, and we focus on ESA countries. ESA is a union of some of the countries located in East Central Africa, and some of the countries in the East Africa community are Burundi. If you look at the history of Burundi, Burundi is a country that is always on edge politically, and we break it down why Burundi is often like that. Even now you can see there's all these stories, Rwanda and Burundi in some form of conflict. Even as we're talking, Burundi's border with Rwanda is closed, right? So that is the number one country. The second country is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is a country that was invaded by Rwanda, and since then this country has not returned to its normality. It has been almost 30 years. Congo experienced conflict, displacement of many people, millions have been killed, right? It's a country that was not also stable, particularly the east side of the country. That's the second country. The third country is Uganda. Uganda is a country that seems stable, peaceful, but politically it's a country that is not stable because it is a country that has been run by one man or one family for more than 30 years. Museveni has been in power for more than 30 years, and he has cracked the opposition leaders. Not many opposition leaders have a say. You probably saw what happened in the last election, even now what is happening to Bobi Wine. And so it's also another country that you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. If Museveni passed away today or tomorrow, what is going to happen to Uganda? That's another country. Then you have Kenya, right? A country that has seen stability and protesting. And as you know, most countries where people protesting a lot, they are countries that are more likely to be more democratic. Any country where people don't protest, that country is more likely to be a country full of dictatorship. 1 in 100 countries that can remain very peaceful and you don't see people protest. But people may be protesting in different ways. Protesting is not just about a mass group of people coming on the street or cause riots. People protest in different ways. So Kenya also been shaken, the Gen Z boys, and before that, Kenya has gone through different years where it has lost its place where it used to be. The Kenya of Uhuru Kenyatta and the Kenya of Ruto, they are completely two different Kenya. And we also explain a little bit why this is happening, right? You have Somalia. As you know, Somalia has been in destruction for many years. Conflict. You have South Sudan, which is also a country that is not stable. It's just in a different conflict and so on. Rwanda, another country that has never been stable. Historically, it has been just like the way I explained about Uganda. It's a country that is dominated by one man, one family. Nobody has freedom of speech. Nobody's allowed to protest. You never see protesting event in Rwanda. There's no opposition parties. Those who emerge, they are prisoned, killed, whether they're in Rwanda, whether they are in different countries. That's the story of Rwanda as well. These are some of the countries that surrounding Tanzania, and some of the countries that share borders, share language, share culture, share politics. These are brotherhood countries with Tanzania. So this is why, as I said, it's not very surprising. And now we then tell the story deep down. What is exactly the problem in this region? So if you look, all these countries I've mentioned share two groups of people. Pay attention. You have the Nilotics people and you have the Bantu people, right? For those who don't know, the Nilotics are the people who came from North Africa, came down toward the Central East Africa. And what they did is they went through different countries, fought with those who own the land. Some of them installed themselves there, or they will carry on, and it went on and on. Another way of looking now, the Nilotics, you also have the Tutsi people. For instance, you have Tutsi in Rwanda, in Uganda, in Burundi, and in most of these countries you will find them. And then you have the Bantu. As I said, originally the Tutsi or the Nilotics are people who came from somewhere else and travel along Africa, and they fought different wars to be in the countries where they install themselves. And there have been countries where they have taken over. Sometimes they will lose power and sometimes they will gain power. We take a country such as Rwanda. The history of Rwanda has been, or what used to happen is that when the Hutu were in power, the Tutsi started combating the Hutus and the Twa. And when they didn't win the wars and conflict, they will run away. They will become refugees and things like that. Mr. Paul Kagame was in Uganda, grew in the refugee camps, and from there he became a rebel of Museveni, and then became a rebel group leader that was able to topple the government in Rwanda after the president was killed by a missile that was said to come from his group. And the core was that Tutsi were being discriminated, not given their share and all that. And since then, Paul Kagame has been in power for all these years. Hutu have no voice. Paul Kagame implemented the laws and policies where you can talk about Tutsi and Hutu and that and that. The government of Rwanda says is because they don't want what happened in 1994 to happen again, because that divided them. But that is just a reason put in place, an umbrella. As the reality is that almost every institution in Rwanda is run by Tutsi. So if you start talking about it, it will show who exactly is in power. And they don't want that. And if you follow democratic ideas, the Tutsi are more likely not to have a power because they are only about 14%, 1% of the Twa, and more than 70% of the Hutu. So you can see 14% of people dominated the entire country. And this has been the idea of the Tutsi or the Nilotics in the region. I don't know whether you have heard of what is called Hima Empire. So the Hima Empire or Tutsi land is basically the idea of the Tutsi or the Nilotics to dominate East Africa, to make sure that all these countries are ruled by Tutsi people, so that they are the one who control everything. As I said, what is in Rwanda today, you can see the person who's in power in Uganda, right? You have to find out. It's not up for me to tell you, because I want to give you a small job for you also to do, as this is where you start thinking about things behind the scene that you don't often think about. You understand. And when you look at the relationship between Paul Kagame and Museveni, it's like a father and a son, right? Then you look at Burundi. How many Bantu president of Burundi do you think have been killed? Look at that. Sudden death, and there have always been conflict between Rwanda and Burundi, because the aim is always to push out the Bantu government in Burundi, to make sure that on the head of Burundi government, there's a Tutsi president. We move to Kenya. The person who was in power, Uhuru Kenyatta, was a Bantu, right? Who is in power at the moment? A Nilotic, Mr. Ruto. Now, how did he come to power? This was a man who was not popular in the country. Think about this. What I'm saying is important, so pay attention. And when he started campaigning, he was campaigning against one of the most resilient opposition leader, not just in Kenya, but in Africa, Raila Odinga. I'm sure you have heard that name. He recently passed away. May his soul rest in peace. He used to often campaign, come very close, but he was unable to win election for many years. But this time, the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, supported his rival, Raila Odinga. Okay, so now take the followers of Raila Odinga and the followers of Uhuru Kenyatta combined together, lost the election against a man who was behind the scene somewhere. Do you think this just happened in the vacuum? These are some of the questions that you have to start asking yourself. And the reason why I said whenever things happen, you have to go deeper to understand there's always something behind the scene. This is something that I just want you to keep in your mind, because later on I will talk about the difference between the protesting event in Tanzania and the protesting event in Kenya, the so-called Gen Z of the Kenya versus the Gen Z of Tanzania. Do you think they all share the same cause, or are they all protesting because of democracy, or how did they got there? How did the youths of Kenya started protesting? And why the youths of Tanzania also start protesting. I will explain that, then I will give you a small extra elaboration on what I just said about President Ruto's election and so on. In this sense, President Ruto is already in power. Somebody similar from the route that I'm talking about, right? The Nilotics or the Tutsi, part of the Tutsi land or Hima Empire. Then you have seen what has been happening in Congo for the last 30 years. The aim of Rwanda has always been to expand itself. Remember what I said, using that empire. This is what is called empire. Remember empires in history. These were powerful government that took different territories, different countries, and rule these areas. So when the empire broke down, then we have countries, right? And the Democratic Republic of Congo has been one of the targets. Forget about all these things that you hear them say. We are after the FDLR, or we are here because the Tutsi in the DRC are being discriminated. Remember what I said, when the Tutsi of Rwanda were fighting the government of Habyarimana, who was a Hutu, it was the same story, right? That they were being discriminated. I'm not saying there was never discrimination against them there, but I'm just reminding you to remember the story, the cause why they are fighting in Congo. It is the similar cause that the government of Rwanda have portrayed in Congo and have sung that song and then added another layer on top saying, oh, they are going after FDLR. Recently, you have heard that they are talking about protecting their border. Have you ever heard somebody who trusts in another person's country but saying that they are protecting their own border? And these Tutsi who are in Congo, the government of Rwanda often say that they are Congolese. They have nothing to do with them. They are Congolese. They are not Rwandese. People in Congo see them as Rwandese because they came from Rwanda. Back in years, they speak Kinyarwanda and so on. But then the government of Rwanda that says they are Congolese, the next day the government of Rwanda will come and say they are in Congo to stand against discrimination against Tutsi who are in Congo. While Rwandese are discriminated in Rwanda. Rwanda is one of the countries that has many people out of its own country, more than many countries in Africa. Many are discriminated and silenced, and they often portray everything in Rwanda to be nice. No problem, visit Rwanda. You have bought into that. I'm not saying you should not visit Rwanda. I'm just saying what it is. So in 1996, Rwanda government was able to topple the government of President Mobutu in Democratic Republic of the Congo, and they placed on top of the government a Tutsi, because Laurent Desire Kabila, who was the president, who they use as a mask to lead the war in Congo, so that as soon as they take the power, they will then place who they wanted to be the president, who of course was going to be a Tutsi. He understood the mission, and as soon as they arrived in Zaire, he proclaimed himself the president. Pay attention. And when he proclaimed himself the president, what happened? They start going after him, and Rwanda invaded the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Again, as you know, when there is agreements and things like that, they were not happy. The side of Rwanda, Uganda, there were few countries that came together with the same mission that I'm saying, Tutsiland and Hima Empire. So they were not happy about it. Some of them returned, some soldiers were left. There are those who were in the government of Congo, different institutions. And a few years later, they assassinated Kabila, the main Kabila, and they placed a Tutsi on top of the government, Joseph Kanambe Kabila. And when he was in power, Rwanda, as you have seen, emerged economically, became more stable economically. They start doing well. You know, the government of Rwanda controlled different institutions in the Democratic Republic of the Congo during the time of Joseph Kabila, right? Uganda could get in Congo and get whatever they want, because these countries, Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, and even some other countries such as Tanzania politically were behind, and they were taking advantage of the Congo, right? For all these years. So former President Joseph Kanambe Kabila lost the power. Bantu President Tshisekedi came to power. And when President Tshisekedi came to power, refused what has been happening in Congo, giving the minerals and everything, let Rwanda, Uganda, and the other few countries control the DRC as they have been doing. And as you know, if somebody is always say yes, 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 even if they have said yes a million times, the day they will say no, that person, this is how human being function, he become a terrible person. We're already enjoying taking. And now this guy is saying, no, this cannot continue. Then that's why you have seen the so-called M23 emerge, right? They start massacring people. This time, Rwanda on army joined openly and made sure that they took the seat of Goma and Bukavu, right? To the point where you see all this conflict you have seen going going on for ages. You might ask yourself, because people always say, oh, how can Rwanda do this to Congo? Why Congo cannot defend? I've heard all this from brothers and sisters of Tanzania and many countries. Remember what I said, countries will bully other countries, and this is always like this. Oh, Congolese people are stupid. Congolese people, they just love music. Congolese people, they like distraction. They can't stand to defend their country. They can't do this and this and this. And this is because you are just eating, sleeping, enjoying TikTok, Instagram. That's what you do. You just don't understand the power behind the politics, right? Rwanda, Uganda, and some of these countries were not acting alone. They had a superpower behind them because it was a mission to invade the Zaire or the Congo and take a power. Whenever countries does that, that means that there are other power behind. It's not what you just hear, what you see, the guns. No, politically, there's so many things that are happening more than you think. This is why you should start paying attention and not just jump in a conclusion, like I said, or don't laugh, don't bully. You have to try to understand the things. And if you don't have that capacity, don't open your mouth and say things that you don't know. That's my advice. That happened to Congo as you have seen it. So similar story, as I said, in Somalia, power control. Sudan was one country, again clash and divided. Similar to Congo, they have always tried to divide that country so that the east is taken. I've already mentioned about Burundi. You have seen the tension between Rwanda and Burundi has increased. And that increased because Burundi understood what was going on and, side itself with the DRC rather than the Rwanda side. Remember what I said before? There were this connection where Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, and other few countries worked together anti-Congo. But this time, Burundi understood that the way these guys are being hunted is the same way I am being hunted as well. So we are under the same war, the same conflict. No. I cannot continue to pick the side of the bad person, the person who's here to destroy, to massacre, to take over, right? I have to stand with what is right. This is why you may have heard President Paul Kagame saying that he spoke with the Burundi president, and the Burundi president promised him that he was not going to support Congo, but the Burundi president chose to side himself with Congo. And with that, President Paul Kagame was not happy about this. And that's how the tension increased. And then Rwanda occupied the city of Bukavu. The aim is to occupy Uvira. And then the story behind is to open the route to Burundi. And in Congo, they created a rebel group, Red Tabara, and the other few that were created in order to topple the government of Burundi. Do you get what I'm saying? Just like this so-called M23. And even M23 had a different name, Sendepe. They just changed names to show that, oh, these are different. These are Congolese, these are these. But this is what you probably know. This is probably what you hear them say. I'm sure you understand this conflict between these few countries. Look at Uganda, who's in power. Look at Burundi, who at the moment is in power. And that's why you can see how Burundi is at the moment. But if there was a Tutsi president in Burundi today, it would have been a different story. When there was a Tutsi president in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, that M23 did what? Went quiet. Sometimes they release a monster. They released a monster to show that the government in power is doing something, is being attacked politically. These things happen. Government can do anything horrible somewhere, for people to panic or for people to see that, wow, this government is dealing with serious matters. This is why sometimes you see conflict or a rebel group somewhere that never finish. You hear about all these Boko Haram and so on. They are always there. And you ask yourself, why our government is never been able to dismantle this small group of rebel group? They are there on purpose. And you must see them as a small, but they are there politically. Either there is a connection between them and the government, or the group is supported by very powerful countries or very powerful people behind the scene, even powerful than your own government. You get that? We are on Tanzania. We are talking about what is happening in Tanzania at the moment and what happened since the 29th of October 2025 election. And what we're saying is that Tanzania has seen one of its darkest days, right? And we are looking at how Tanzania got where it is at the moment. And I was just explaining the issue going on in the region. That's where we are at. And one of the issues that we identify is that there is a war in East Africa that has the purpose to place Tutsi or Nilotic people in power, called Hima Empire or Tutsi land, to create a territory of Tutsi people. Because around East Africa, the Tutsi are minority, and that is not something they appreciate. They might be the minority, but they want to be the one who control everything. That's the philosophy behind behind the scene. Remember I said I was going to show you the difference between the protesting event in Kenya, Gen Z from the Kenya, and the protesting event in Tanzania. Let's start with the Gen Z of Kenya. Many young people in Kenya supported Ruto because Ruto promised the young people change, jobs, opportunities. And after all this promise, when President Ruto was elected, all these things that he said, he couldn't do them. And one of the reasons why he couldn't do them is because he lost the support of the former president Uhuru Kenyatta, who was there before him, who knew what to get, where to go. And then on the opposition side, he didn't have that. And politically, this is important because to rule a country is not like cooking porridge. And another way it could be like that because you need a combination of different things. You need to have people behind you, whether these are powerful people or whether these are ordinary people. That's why they say it's better somebody who give you the connection, because when you have a good connection with valuable people, you often have somewhere to tend to. So when President Ruto came to power, he didn't have these investments. He used the money for campaigning and all this and that. But this time, he needed the money to run the country. And remember, many of these politicians and powerful people in the country control things. This is why in many countries, when there is a former president, he's often somebody who's still there, who's powerful, because he has connection. He's the one who wants to tell the president who's coming, we made a mistake there. We went this place, it didn't work. You can go this side. This time you can go this way. But President Ruto lost this, right? When you need the money, if you don't use the key which is the connection, they can say, you know what, sorry, we don't know you. We know Uhuru Kenyatta. We can't give you the loan, or we can't open our business to you. And when you get that no, that's when the president don't know what to do. You know, things start collapsing bit by bit. Where is the money gonna come from? Remember, President Ruto became one of the most spoken president of Africa in the world. He came with this idea of Africa champions, Pan-Africanism. And because Africa is emerging into that, people appreciate that. And young people of Africa and Kenya saw the man that they were looking for many years. That's the man they needed, right? But what happened? If you don't do what you promised to do, of course, people can be a little bit patient and looking at you. And when you don't deliver, they start questioning. No. You say this, you say that. This is where the Gen Z of Kenya start questioning. Forget first about the opposition. Of course, those on opposition side, they always put a stick in the fire to increase the fire, that kind of thing. But the fire was already there. And the division of what I'm saying of the Bantu, the Utu and Tutsi on politics is within, behind the scene. You might not see it, you might not know it, but it's there. How President Ruto came to power, he probably received some support from these guys. All these countries that I've been mentioning. That's why I said whenever somebody win an election from nowhere, there must be a hand behind the scene. Not everything comes for free. And the government of Rwanda, for instance, if you follow the other podcast I've produced, they are great at doing this. You know, they use the lobbyings, they go after people who have influence. They bribe them a lot of money. And before you know it, these guys turn the language. They work with opposition leaders and things like that. So this is where President Ruto probably came from. If you think about what I'm saying, when he let these young people down, these young people of Kenya understood Ruto was not delivering what he said. They started to rise up. The opposition, Raul Odinga, and other opposition leaders saw this as an opportunity. And at the beginning, President Ruto was arrogant. He underestimated these young people, but he didn't see or realize what has been happening in the world. He lost the connection with the young people of Kenya. And from that moment, the fire started burning, just as what you have seen in Tanzania. You saw it happening in Tanzania. The fire started burning, people talking, the opposition talking. They were saying they were going to protest, but the government and the police, they were even scaring the people, saying they will crack them down. They won't let it happen on this and that and that. So they too underestimated the Tanzanians, young people, opposition leaders, and the power behind them, to the point where these young people emerged, the Gen Z of Kenya, and they start protesting, and it became a massive thing. And once the protesting event turned in chaos, then that's it. It's just like what they say, it's better the protection than the cure or than the medication. So once you you caught an illness, it now becomes so difficult to treat. That's the reason why you have to try to prevent an illness. You have to prevent something instead of waiting it to become something and then you try to stop it or treat it. That's when the protesting event turned into riot. What did President Ruto did? He killed the young people. He had to use some form of power because the amounts of pressure he was under, and he was told he has to resign. He understood that he was elected. He's in power. He's not gonna let it go easily. He fought all these years to be where he is. He spent his money. He was not gonna let his power go like that. No. Even you, if you were in his shoes, you won't do that, because what happened is when these people lose power, those who take power are more likely to come after them. So he decided to say, I'm not gonna let this go. I will found different ways. And bless him, he started talking to the young people of Kenya, cut the budget. He did that to the point where he brought the country to come. He passed the test. But if you ask me whether that is gone, probably not. You and I know, looking at what has been happening in Kenya, you doubt it in the next election, Kenyans will vote for President Ruto, because there's no magic he can do. It is what it is. The difficulties the country facing is nothing perhaps to do with him. And you also have to remember the agenda that I said to you. These are things that you have to keep in mind. Now, let's look at the Gen Z of Tanzania. The Gen Z of Kenya, we may say this is about democracy, right? They were promised, but the government did not deliver. This is more likely to be about democracy. When we go to the other side, Tanzania is probably the combination of the things I have been saying here, right? Most popular figures, the entertainers, the celebrity of Tanzania, the majority of them support CCM. CCM is very powerful in Tanzania. But how did Tanzania go where it is at the moment? To understand it, you have to understand this wave that I am talking about. When you look at it, you come to understand that there is a power behind. Remember when I said Tanzania was a country that was an example in the East Africa in terms of stability and democracy. And the Tanzania of Mama Samia Suluhu started linking itself more toward Burundi and Congo, South Africa, the SADC side rather than the ESA side, because the ESA is dominated by the Tutsi-land ideology and the SADC is more like the Bantu ideology, if I can put it that way. Before that, the times of Magufuli and those who were there before him, that's when Tanzania was getting dragged in Congo conflict. They also went in Congo as part of the ESA mission, but the soldiers of ESA refused to fight, because who are they going to fight against? They're going to fight against the power that is being pushed in by the countries within the same organization. That's when Congo, after 1 year, they said, sorry, you have to go back home. We ask you to come to help us, but you have not done it. And Paul Kagame often said a lot of negative things about this. Even the President Ruto said a bit about this. But it's always President Kagame who is always nagging about this, saying, oh, ESA should be allowed to go help. Or President Tshisekedi refused ESA and not. Hang on. This president has the right to choose who to invite in to come and help. He has always blamed Congo also by inviting Burundi. He said, President Tshisekedi, invite Burundi, invite this country, invite that country, but no Rwanda. We know why they are not inviting Rwanda, of course. So this wave of this ideology, this fire set in the East Africa is what has caught Tanzania. And what was done was to make sure that the opposition are supported. And when you support the opposition leaders and that opposition leader starts pushing that agenda, speak that language in its country, invest money for those who have the voice in the country to rise up and start having this idea of protesting. This is why you have heard that during this riot in Tanzania, there were people who were not from Tanzania, soldiers, ordinary citizens, and because the citizens of Tanzania, just like many other citizens around the world these days, are tired of their government, particularly the young people. They want to see change. The difficulties that country are facing is not just your country. Yes, you don't understand it, you might not accept it, but this unemployment thing is not about your country. It's a problem that is happening worldwide. Even powerful countries such as the United Kingdom, France, struggling. Yes, it's not worse than some of these African countries or so-called non-developed countries, but these poverty, these difficulties, economic problems, political instability is something that is going worldwide. This is why you see many wars and conflict around the world. world. In this sense, many Tanzanians, particularly young people who feel tired of not seeing their life change, this is where you get them. This is the right moment where they catch them. Politicians and bad people know what is happening in the country, and they know when to reach, who to approach, when somebody's going through a hard time, economically, mentally, physically. Even some of you, you know this, right? If you've been trying to get in a relationship with this person, you love this person, but you never get a chance. Wait until this person faces a problem and you become as the helper of that person. What do you think normally happens? This person who's being helped, the guiltiness, seeing you supporting them or whatever, you probably not doing it because you want to do it or you really want to help, but you're doing it because you have a mission to achieve. What you are looking is just to be with that person or to get something from that person, right? But you use that moment to say, I'm sorry, look at this and that and that. This person will sympathize with you on a great level. He will sympathize with you. She will sympathize with you to the point where you think nobody is listening to me. The moment where nobody understands what I'm saying. The moment where nobody came to my rescue. He was the person who came. He is the person who's here. She was the person who came to me. That is the assurance. This is the kind of a person I need. And this is what normally happens with this politics. Politicians are almost the same. The number one thing about politicians is power. Don't be fooled, is being in power. And you just be there, follow them, support them, do this and do that, right? Because politics without power means nothing, right? So they take this moment of what has been happening in the world, right? They looked at what happened in Kenya, the young people protesting, and what they start doing is they throw a lot of things in the social media, right? These are propaganda that are being done. You might not be able to understand it. What they might do is they will look for other young people, let's say in Kenya, influencers in Kenya, influencers in different countries. And some of these influencers will travel even to Tanzania. And what they will be doing is a small Twitter, a post on Instagram. You may think it doesn't make a difference. It makes a huge difference. When you see all these people who speak like a Mangi, Kimambi, whatever, I'm not saying that everybody who's speaking in this way is not doing it with a good intention or has been paid to do it, but I'm saying this is where you have to pay attention on who is saying what and why. That's where they usually have to find a story. We are being discriminated. Opposition leader are not being given voice. These people are not being given this. Look at the country. They always try to show the problem, right? But when the government see the pressure, what the government does, remember what I said, what the politicians do is they use the power, particularly when something's been maintained for years. That's the reason why I said the government of Tanzania underestimated what was happening in Tanzania, right? Because they have enjoyed the peace and the stability for many years. And for that, you cannot blame them. Many countries, many governments do these mistakes. These are the things that people do. When you look at the changes that happened in North Africa, Egypt, Tunisia, the Arab Spring, is all part of these things. Comes a wave that can go within the country. This is why you see what happened in Kenya, happened in Madagascar, happened in Cameroon. It's a wave that going around. Before you know it, you start seeing a lot of politics on social media, as this is where young people are. And opposition leaders also use this moment to do things which sometimes can even lead them to be imprisoned, or they might say things. All these things are well planned in order to set fire, okay? It's not mainly about democracy, but in the name of democracy, people will take actions that will create instability in the country, we create protesting event, we create a riot, but their intention might not be democratic. Their intention could be to hold the power or to bring the destruction in the country. Because when your country is distracted, then if I'm doing very bad, the attention shift. Rwanda's been under pressure because of what has been happening in the DRC. They are losing every battle at international level and that kind of thing. So politicians sometimes support a particular group in a different country to start something, and that will switch the attention. Remember the war between Ukraine and Russia. When the conflict increase between Israel and Hamas, it kind of gave Russia a moment to breathe because they were really under pressure from the international community. But the attention kind of shift toward the Middle East, right? And this is what often happens. And this could be what happened in Tanzania. And that is just to destroy. Yes, for the young people, for ordinary people, they may just see it as a part of freedom of expression. And as I said, because government often use power and often underestimate the voice of people, then they will apply power. And when they apply power, this is like when you try to bend a stick that is already dry. It's not gonna bend, it will break. This is where many governments usually collapse. If you do it wrongly, then you break it. This is where you saw in Madagascar, the president had to run away from the country because he realized that I'm not gonna stand this. Even the military, I don't feel they support me, right? So this is when government have to be very careful, because anything that the government does will be used against it. I'm not saying that what the government of Tanzania did or what they were doing before that was great, but I was just explaining to you the difference between what happened in Kenya and what is happening in Tanzania. What happened in Tanzania seems to be a push from the outside that is setting fire to divide the Tanzanians, to break the record of democracy in Tanzania, to actually look somebody who can take a power and who will be able to join this empire of Tutsi-land idea I am talking to you about, if it makes sense. Different from democracy, because democracy doesn't mean that if the minority of people want change, that change should be made. No, in democracy, you go with the majority. They are the minority. Whatever they say can be heard in some ways and has to be taken in consideration. But in these African countries in particular, sometimes it's a little bit hard. And that is the difference. The outside fire is what is burning in Tanzania at the moment. And the government of Tanzania supposed to look at this and see what was coming. Remember what I said, when this was happening in Kenya, they didn't probably consider all this. What was happening in Burundi, in Congo. And perhaps they understood what was happening and they knew maybe this was going to happen. And this is the reason why they kind of like start shifting. So in my understanding, this is the difference between what happened in Tanzania to what happened in Kenya. Often when people fighting, that's when the devil come in to find a way for you to react. And the government of Tanzania, as they reacted, it didn't go well. And when people started being stopped, prison, this is where the devil or the bad people can also come and kidnap people, shoot people. And who's gonna look like has done all this? It's the Tanzanian government, right? Tanzania government, of course, will look irresponsible government, because people have been killed and the Tanzania have the right to protest. A man don't have the right to create a riot, breaking good and whatever, but they do it to show their anger. To break properties is not part of their right. You have the right to protest, but sometimes before riot, a protesting often take place, and then when police crash with protesters, that's what normally turn into riot. Who do you think win from that moment? Not the protesters who protest for good intention, neither the government. Those who win are the bad people, the bad apples, who want to see things go bad. Those who want to see you separate. If you're in a relationship, they will be just around you. They are just watching, or maybe they might say something, oh, this guy, I know he didn't like you. The first moment I saw him, what I said to myself was, I don't trust this guy. This guy probably made a mistake. You think in some way to forgive this person, but the devil is telling you, you ask this friend of yours, what do you think? I said, me, people like this, I'm not gonna forgive him. I'm not gonna forgive her. Once a cheater is a cheater, right? If somebody cheated before, who says he's not gonna do it again? He's probably or she's probably gonna do it again, But in your head, you know somewhere that he made a mistake, and probably you are the reason why this person did this. But because you are now in that moment, you can't see clearly anymore. This is where Tanzania got itself, right? And in that moment, even within the government, they're usually bad people. You found bad people everywhere. The policies can be bad. There are policies who would love to see things go horrible. There are policies who may want to see the horrible happen. This is where they take the advantage. This is their moment. So this is where Tanzania found itself. I started sympathizing with what happened in Tanzania. Was not great or is not great. Tanzania is a wonderful country in Africa that many Africans look at as a good example of stability and democracy. And we want many countries in Africa and in the world to be like that, right? I'm not saying there will never be problems. There will never be any issue, protesting or whatever. But I'm just saying a country that is stable is stable. And it's not just the few that are affected when a government is affected. Is the entire country. When the cities like Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, Arusha, Mwanza, and so on are in chaos, that is almost the entire Tanzania that is on fire or is burning. So I started by sympathizing with what happened. It's not great. It's not what we want to see in Africa. If there is any place that need to see that, the least is Africa, because there's no place that needs development, togetherness, doing better than Africa. It's the least developed continent. Instead, it should be the other way around. because of the resources that Africa has, because of the culture and traditions, how Africa lives. There are people who live together, who love the togetherness, brotherhood, familyhood. But when it comes to politics and whatever, it's the other way around, because they have let the devil stand between them and ruin everything. And I gave my sincere condolences to the family who lost their loved ones. I also provide a light to show that what is happening in Tanzania is the result of what has happened somewhere else. But the only thing is that Tanzanians themselves didn't open the eyes to see what was happening the other side and they learn from it. Whether this is the government or whether this is the normal population, they didn't pay much attention. They were just thinking it's just happening there. Okay, that is their problem. Some of them will laugh and bully the other brothers and sisters from other countries, and not knowing that this could be their country one day. Nobody saw it coming. And then I went to explain that what caused the problems in the other neighboring countries, particularly countries in East African community, is that there is a group of people that have been trying to build an empire called Hima Empire, right? For Nilotics descent, or a Tutsi land for Tutsi descent, to control East Africa. And when I say Tutsi, I'm not saying every Tutsi. It's not everybody who's into this idea of creating this empire. This is general speaking, because this is not every Tutsi. So there is that empire that some of these countries, such as Rwanda, Uganda, have been trying to build and influence other countries, try to take over the territories in order to actually push this idea of Tutsi land, according to data around, and the idea being to change government within the countries where the head of the state are Bantu and place Tutsi. Or if there is a Hutu or a Bantu government, they have to make sure that they control those countries. This is the issue going on in East Africa that not many of you see or understand. I explained that, and I showed how countries such as Rwanda and Uganda create chaos in neighboring countries. Then I went on to compare the difference between the protesting event in Kenya and those of Tanzania. I provided also a difference. A difference is that Kenyans protested because they were promised something to be delivered by the government of President Ruto, but that change didn't come. On the other side of Tanzania, I also acknowledge that there is an issue because Tanzania has been dominated by one political party that has been in power for many years. Yes, in order to hold stability, government use the power to squeeze the opposition. Even in football match, you make sure that you don't give the opponent a chance to breathe, to run, and government does all this. And these often create a little tension among minority parties and those who support them, right? And this often wait when the right moment comes. And because of what has been happening around the world in terms of the difficulties of life, particularly countries that have many young people, creating jobs and opportunity for them has been very difficult. Many young people are driven to protest by this desire of change. It's not democracy as democracy, but it's just a desire for change, for what they see as their right being respected, them getting jobs, education, and all that. So when countries are going through this, then I explain that power I explained of this group who have the aim of making sure that they control the East Africa got an opportunity to probably go behind the scene, push money in there, found the people who have a voice in Tanzania and set fire in this country. The government of Tanzania probably didn't see this coming. They underestimated what was happening somewhere else in the region and what the opposition leaders and their people were saying. They thought everything was under control, but it was not. And remember, if somebody is influenced or was paid to do something, he or she will put his life on the rope to do whatever it takes because he's already been paid for it. He has been given an agenda in his head. And this is where the two parties didn't come together to find a solution before the worst happened. And the government reacted as they often do with a force, and it went wrong. This gave an opportunity to those who wanted to see Tanzania break down, those who wanted to see Tanzania lose that credibility of a stable country. But there's a bright side about this. First of all, what happened. We cannot turn that time back. As I said, this could be your country one day. This is the reason why it is always great to support what is right. We cannot bring back the dead, the shops, and the business that were destroyed. Yes, we can release those who are in jail, those who are in prison, that is possible, and I'm sure that will be done one day. And my conclusion is that Tanzanians, you are very wonderful people, and I'm sure this too shall pass. There are countries that experience worse and horrible things than this. 10 times your neighbors. Imagine what they go through or they have been through. Remember what I said, some of these countries for the last 30 years, Congo lost more than 10 millions of people. People have been raped to a number that you never imagined. Millions have been displaced. But still, they have not given up. These guys continue to fight. And you can see the future of the Congo seems bright because the devil is losing. So sooner or later, Congo is going to be a very different Congo. Congo was never always like that. Congo of Mobutu was a Congo that was respected, was a Congo that people will live in different countries and go get treatment in this country. So I'm sure these two shall pass and you can come together. Tanzanians need to come together, sit at the table, look at what went wrong, whether the devil got involved, the influence from the outside, or the bad apples within Tanzania, whether this is the side of government, whether this is the side of opposition leaders, whether these are ordinary people, business people. These things happen, right? These things happen, and Tanzania is not exceptional. So you should not feel like this is the end of the world, because it's not. This can pass. Just come together. Have a great intention about your country. The government is an institution where people come and go, meaning that those who are in power today may not be there 10 years after. Sit down, come together and found a solution, right? Those who have been wrongly imprisoned, put in jail, found a way to release them, show some form of recognition and respect to those who were killed during this period of time. Yes, of course, found those who wanted to destroy your country and bring them to justice. It doesn't matter who he is, whether this is a minister, whether this is an opposition leader, these people should be brought to justice, right? And by coming together, I'm sure you'll find a solution and the future will be much brighter than today. What has happened can be taken as a lesson. Use this as a way forward. What doesn't kill you make you strong, right? This can be used as an opportunity to make you strong, because at least now you know, oh, this can also happen to us Tanzanians. Wow, which means not just this, the worst can happen in Tanzania. A war can happen in Tanzania. Anything is possible. So moments like these are moments where you draw lessons, where if you were very distracted, you have to stop being distracted, because the Tanzanians also are becoming more distracted. When I look at Tanzanian Congolese used to look like the music people, entertainment people. But if you look at today, Tanzania seems to be in advance. You know, this celebrity thing, Diamond, Ali Kiba, whatever, all this music, football, social media, all the time, you have become the master of it. A lot of jokes, comedy and things like that. You are not behind the brothers. But it's never used to be like this with Tanzanians. And I'm not saying you should not do these things, because all these things are great. It's just that you have to do this, but you pay attention of what is happening, not just in the country, in the region, and on international level. We are all part of politics, whether we like it or not. If there is a change in New York, that change can come and affect you in Dar es Salaam. That change can affect you in Namibia, because those who are there take decisions that affect or help the world. Do you get what I'm saying? So pay attention, and the government should reduce their ego and see the bright future, while the opposition leaders should also remove their ego of thinking that the outside can help them or have the best interest for you more than the people within. I'm not saying an outside person cannot be a good person or cannot do good for you than your own brother. Your own brother can kill you, can wish you the worst to happen. But generally speaking, if somebody is coming to set fire in your house, to say that you need to claim your share, you need to claim your position, you have to watch carefully, because the same person will go one day the other side, or might leave and may become your problem. But brothers and sisters can sit at the table, no matter how long it has taken, and say, you know what, you are my brother. No matter what, I need you, you need me. We are neighbors. A fire that has started in your house is going to affect my house. This is the mentality I want many Africans to always have. If there's a fire in Burundi, it is the fire for Congo, Uganda, for Tanzania, Zambia, for South Africa, for the world. It is something that can affect you as well. Don't be fooled by people who comes behind and say, oh, this country is beautiful, but you don't want to question why that country is seen as this and that. You have to start questioning things deeply. I'm sure we have reached the end of this conversation. I hope that you have learned something, or you will take something out of this conversation. Perhaps you don't agree with everything I said. I'm not here to actually make you agree with what I said. That's not the purpose. The purpose of these conversations conversations is to actually bring a perspective in your thoughts for you to look, for you to start questioning and see beyond the line, right? Put your ego down, put your stupidity down, remove your feelings, see the big picture. The country is always large and bigger than the politicians, bigger than a small group of people somewhere. You have to see the big picture of your country. Tanzania is a great country, and let it be great again. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any question, any thoughts, anything you want to contribute, if there is something that I said you don't agree with, you can always share with us. We are here to learn too. That's how we educate one another, because we are not saying this against anyone. We're just saying what it is. Common sense is about understanding what it is, what is exactly is there behind the scene. I hope you join us on the next episode. Please follow our social networks, which is Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Just type Andunda Tree, and our website, which is andundatree.com. Once again, my name is Balozi Ezrak. Until next time, one love. Asante sana kwa kunifuata mwanzo mpaka mwisho. Ninaamini tutakutana tena next time. Mungu akubariki.